Hi, thanks everyone for joining today's session. So as you saw in the announcement for today's session, hopefully, over 1.3 million users trigger a GitLab pipeline every single month. However, of those, only 5,000 interact with a paid testing feature that we offer. So today's session is going to provide an overview of the problems that our testing capabilities solve, why customers should care, and how premium and ultimate customers can get more value out of their GitLab investment by leveraging these capabilities and increase our stickiness within those accounts. So joined today by James Heimbuck. James, thanks so much for joining us. James is a senior product manager for Verify Testing. So James, thanks again for joining us. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start share. All right, hopefully everyone can see giant Tanuki. Fantastic. All right, well, thanks for having me here today. I am James Heimbuck, the product manager for the Verify testing team. Some of you might know me from customer calls or other videos that I've shared in the past. I just wanted to say thank you so much for looping us product folks into those discussions with customers. It's always appreciated. It's really helpful for us as well. And like David said, today I'm going to be talking a little bit about our vision for testing and some of the ways that you can position the features and the testing categories, especially in the premium tier, and how they tie to the value drivers for our customers. So I want to start with the normal disclaimer, especially if this is for public, that all of this that I'm talking about potentially future work is subject to change or delay, et cetera, standard warnings. All right, so I want to start with our 3-year vision. Our 3-year vision within testing is that we want to enable developers to have production-ready code within an hour of their first commit to an MR. It is a big, audacious goal, but it's one that we think we can achieve. We believe that presenting that data that's being generated in pipelines as early as possible to developers supports that shortened feedback loop. We also believe that this data can then be aggregated and presented to other stakeholders in the organization, and it provides them actionable data insights that can drive faster value delivery to their customers. So to get to that 3-year vision, we're using some of the same stage themes that you might have seen from Jackie Porter in her second half kickoff video for the Verify stage: speedy, reliable pipelines, operations for all, smart feedback loop, and GitLab hosted first. So I want to connect our testing efforts and their respective product themes to the value drivers that convey customer value. I can help you speak to the benefit when you're engaging with customers or prospects and address things that are important to their success. So our investment in the usability and performance of the build artifact management, the ability to parallelize tests, and our MVC around flaky test history all contribute to delivering better products faster. We've heard from customers on our side that faster and more predictable pipelines just make it easier for teams to get their jobs done when they're developing software. In the operations for all theme, the coverage check merge request approval rule aligns with some organizations' need to reduce their compliance risk by providing that check and evidence that test coverage standards are being met for every merged change. Driving a faster feedback loop are the test coverage visualization, the merge request widgets for performance testing and accessibility testing, so that developers and reviewers can make improvements during the development cycle in areas that are often neglected until right before release. And this increases operational efficiency for organizations where issues found later could have delayed a release by days or even weeks, because that testing is so often done late in the process. And lastly, we're prioritizing in testing our GitLab hosted first capabilities, with our efforts to improve endpoint performance, especially when it comes to large artifacts, either being loaded or parsed, and then management of those artifacts to in turn help customers keep their own storage costs down. Well, there's a lot on one slide, so we're going to dig into each of those a little bit individually. And to do that, I'm going to dig into features that customers are probably already familiar with and how they can leverage those to get additional value out of the testing features in those free and premium tiers. So some common use cases that we see amongst customers are parsing code coverage to display it at the project level on a badge, using review apps to review changes, or maybe they want to enable that DAST scanning, and just setting up runners for their CI/CD pipelines. And they're testing features that they can build on each of these existing use cases in almost all tiers of the product. So let's start with the code coverage badge use case. So customers might be parsing code coverage just to put it onto the badge. But some other capabilities that they get with that are within merge requests, then you can see the difference between your change and the target branch, so you can see how it would impact that. That's available at the free tier. And customers in the premium tier can use the new merge request approval rule coverage check, so that if they want to ensure that code coverage is staying at least flat or increasing with every change, it would need to get approved if it doesn't. And all of this is enabled just by parsing that coverage on the pipeline, and that's what drives the badge. Another use case that builds on that same parsing is tracking code coverage value over time. All users who are parsing code coverage on the default branch already have this graph at the project level with no additional work today. It's accessible in the analytics repository left nav item. We kind of hit it a little bit. But for customers who have a lot of projects, thousands of projects potentially, they don't want to get into every single project to see how things are trending over time. And so for customers in the premium tier, there's the group code coverage feature as well. So same place, repository analytics, you'll be able to see how test coverage is trending over time for all of the projects that have that data. If you don't want to see it within the GitLab view, you're able to download that as a CSV for external analysis. And from this view, you can click into problematic projects and see what's going on in those individually. So those are 4 additional features, 2 in the free tier and 2 in premium, that customers can leverage today if they already parse code coverage to display it in that badge. Review apps is another great feature that a lot of customers are taking advantage of from the free tier up to the ultimate tier. If they're launching a review app, you can use it to run browser performance testing and getting that data back into the merge request review itself, or the merge request summary itself. That'll shorten that feedback loop about page speed. We know how much that can impact e-commerce and prevent changes from going out that would negatively impact the browsing experience for customers, seeing that directly in the merge request. And then there's my favorite feature, visual review tools. This lets any user leave a comment in a merge request directly from the review app. So designers, product managers, other stakeholders around the org who don't want to go walk over to a developer desk and look over their shoulder to see how things are going, they can see it in the review app, leave the comments directly in the merge request itself. You don't have to toggle back and forth between the review app and an issue, or the review app and Jira or Slack or email, where those conversations can get lost. You're just doing it all within the review app. All of those comments go directly into the MR for the developer to see. It's just a great experience. Both of those are included in the premium tier and can be used with a little additional setup as detailed in the documentation. And as a bonus, the accessibility testing, which provides that diff view as well, same as browser performance, is available in the free tier and can use review apps to do the accessibility scanning as well. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about runners. I know getting runners set up is often a big hurdle for customers, but we know that once they do, they unlock just so much value of GitLab. And code quality is one of those categories that offers value at all of the tiers. So including the code quality template in their YAML file and running it on merge requests and the default branch can give that user a feedback loop about the quality of their code base. It can be customized by all users to include additional plugins for more scans, or exclude files to speed up the scans, and exclude directories for things that they just don't care about getting scan data on. And the best thing about code quality in SaaS, I think, is that you can run a scheduled pipeline just once a week, and it only has those single jobs in it, and get those full reports so that you can see over time how code quality in SaaS are changing through the reports. It can be a great gateway for customers to using GitLab CI as they want to incorporate more and more of our built-in security capabilities as part of their build process and lessen their reliance on and the cost of those external tools. So for free users in the merge request, they can see the diff between the report on their branch and the latest report from their target branch. Premium users have access to the full reports within the UI on the pipeline page. if they want to see all of the problems in their branch and fix additional issues. And finally, ultimate customers can visualize those changes from the MR diff from the merge request widget in the MR diff itself. So they're not having to toggle back and forth during a code review to see what line was that code quality problem on. They see it directly in the interface. And this category has recently been transferred over to the static analysis team. And we worked closely with them on this last feature because we knew that we were transferring it over at the time. So static analysis scan data will use the same interface. So a customer can see both security problems and code quality problems in the review. And the most important things will be surfaced to the top. You're not going to see linting to do errors first. You're going to see those critical security violations first, but it's all one user experience, not more things jammed into that MR diff view. So going back to our value driver connections, if customers have that coverage badge, they can turn that into reduction of compliance risk through the coverage check MR approval rule. Customers who might be using review apps today can add browser performance, accessibility scanning to get that feedback earlier in the development process, and use visual review tools to get feedback from stakeholders directly in the MR earlier in the process as well, increasing their operational efficiencies. And lastly, customers with shared or dedicated runners unlock all of those code quality features from the free tier MR widget to the ultimate tier inline annotations, which can help them deliver better products faster. So thank you so much for your time. I'll be sharing this deck. It includes links to all of our direction pages, documentation for the categories and the features, recordings of speed runs showing off those features, and sample projects for all of them as well. If you want to get in there and try things out yourself, use those for demos with current customers or prospects and show them those capabilities and how they can unlock additional value through testing. And with that, I'd love to open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, James. So everyone, you know the drill. Please add questions to the Q&A section, or if you're having any trouble accessing the notes doc, speak up or add it to the chat window. I see our first, you mentioned it already, James, but yeah, Christopher Wang wanted to see if we could get a link to the slides from today.
Yeah, absolutely. I will share that over to David to make sure that they get included. I think they get stuck into the issue, or I'll add them directly to the issue.
All right, thank you. Bodhi, you got the next question. Would you like to verbalize that, sir?
Yes, sir. Sorry, mute button problems. So I live in the channel services world, so my brain is always like, how much work is that, right? So you said, okay, free, you can do some stuff, premium, you can do other things, ultimate, you can do even more things. To light up that goodness, how much effort, like how good does someone have to be to do that? Is it a switch you toggle on, or do you actually have to know something, and therefore is it a services opportunity?
There's a little bit of know-how, especially around the setting up review apps. I would say that that's probably where there's the most work. And then for development teams themselves, the visual review tools requires you to include a script in the code itself of the site. That's a feature that we know is a big hurdle, or that's a setup that we know is a big hurdle for the user, and something we want to get away from. So that's just auto injected almost. And you get the review apps for free or you get the visual review tools rather for free when you're already using review apps. Most of these though are include a template and you're good to go. And the code coverage stuff at the beginning, if you're parsing code coverage out for that badge, all of the rest of that is set up and ready to go. The code coverage check, the merge request approval rules, it's just another one of those. So it follows that same procedure for security checks that you might have or other approvals that you might have already set up. It's just another check type.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Sherry, you've got the next.
Yes, thanks, James. Very, very insightful. I know you did a few sessions with some of my customers that it received really well. Just want to know if you have any competitive analysis you can also share across, because we often hear customers mention other tools, names. Just want to be better prepared and also show anything unique from our offering. Yeah. And how well we're positioned to be competitive in the market.
I have not put together much content on competitive analysis. As part of our direction pages, there's always a competitive landscape section where it might talk about how a specific competitor, say review apps, if they're working with Netlify deploy previews, that would be one that we have comparable. And usually we talk about how we have advantages over those competitors on the direction pages as well. So that's where I would point you to start.
Okay, thanks.
Samir.
Thank you, James. Thank you again. Love your work and love your team's work. Thank you again for sharing all the information today. My question is around are there any further plans to integrate with industry testing tools like Selenium, Cucumber, LoadRunner, anything around that?
Direct integration today isn't on the roadmap. I would say that most of those spit out a report of some type or another, and we can consume a lot of those. I think as we think about how do we get that data back into GitLab and put it in front of the developer as part of their normal MR process, that's where our biggest opportunity might lie in supporting additional report formats beyond what we have today with JUnit for test results and Cobertura for code coverage, specifically because those are our biggest categories. And so figuring out what those report types are and getting those incorporated without customers having to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of that transformation themselves is probably the biggest opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all the questions so far. Anybody want to come off mute? Yeah, if you have another one. James, what are some good open-ended questions to ask customers around kind of prompting perhaps a discussion on these topics?
I love to ask about accessibility testing, browser performance testing, because those are so often happening late in the game. My other favorite one, because I'm a product person, is ask, how do you get feedback from your product managers? And as part of your acceptance testing, when does that happen in the process? I can't tell you how many times I've looked over a developer's shoulder to check a change and trusted it works on my machine, it'll be fine in production statement. Just gives me a queasy feeling every time as a product person. Yeah, understanding those and then being able to offer back, oh, well, we can provide accessibility testing at W3C standards. You can see that as part of your MR and see where things aren't going to work for customers out there. There's that Domino's case where there was a pretty big fine leveraged against them because they didn't have an accessible app. Get in front of those problems early. Referencing back to the browser performance, slowdowns in e-commerce pages especially impact customers. They drop off really, really quickly and don't complete those purchases. And it's just a bad experience for them overall. So any type of that testing that they're doing later in the stage of development, push that further to the left as much as possible.
Thank you.
I'd turn it around and ask the team here, what kind of testing solutions or testing problems are customers asking about? What are we not covering with the current feature set today, and where there might be opportunities to help you sell into some of these customers or do the expansion part of land and expand?
So James, if I may, to answer your question there, something that has come up, not so terribly frequently, but is starting to come up in the DevOps environment, at least in the US federal region, is with regards to smoke testing. And I know it's a different category of testing, but it's sort of like once you've already deployed, like how do you make sure everything's working, especially in microservices areas and things like that?
So a bit of testing in production before you roll out everywhere. Yeah, that's, I've been talking to the folks in our release stage lately about how can we provide that testing as part of, some different deployment strategies, Canary or, blue-green types of things. Can we run a job that runs some of those automated tests and, do an automatic rollback? sooner at that point if there are tests that fail running a limited test set. We think that technically you could put it together with what you have in the pipeline today, but it's not a great experience, and the tests themselves would just show up everywhere that they would normally show up. So there might be some opportunity around, here's just a deployment pipeline, here's where the tests for that deployment, the smoke tests for that deployment happen. It's nice to hear that there are customers talking about this and not just Kevin and myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's come up quite a bit in the context of fuzz testing and API testing, because those can be also in the production area and be delivering something. So that tends to start the larger conversation of, okay, if we're testing the API, how are we smoke testing this stuff? Can we leverage the two? Can we merge the two? Those kinds of questions.
Yeah. Are customers finding workarounds for this within GitLab today, or ways to accomplish this, or are they fully leveraging other third-party tools?
To be honest, my customers aren't even doing anything. So for them, this is just like pie in the sky. Okay. But that's truly the value that they start seeing, right? Is they see GitLab offering them something that they're just not even able to attack right now.
Gotcha. So if we were able to give them an outcome of, you can define some tests, you can track those tests as part of your deployment pipeline, and you can set some thresholds for a rollback based on the results of those tests, it sounds like it might be a positive outcome for them.
At the very least, yes, I think that would be a great start.
Okay, it's good to know. Thank you so much, Samir.
Any other perspectives to that question? Yeah, what kind of testing challenges are your customers running into?
It is Ron Crosser speaking. I don't necessarily have hear from specific challenges right away, but what I am hearing is customers asking for what kind of code coverage tools we're including in the software. And presently we sort of say like, well, use your favorite tool and then, present it in a specific format. Are there any kind of plans to maybe take some of the popular open source solutions and maybe work some type of a job that you can include as an include statement, similar to, say, your code quality job, where we do language detection and then process this for a customer already? I mean, when you're going through a conversation with a customer and you talk to them about code quality as well as some of the other jobs, and you see that result in a widget being presented, that's super powerful. I think they're looking for similar, capabilities, potentially out of the box, versus saying, well, figure out your own, quality tool or your own coverage tool, because some of the customers just aren't there yet. Any thoughts on that?
I'm trying to hunt down the epic around code coverage reports. There it is. We have an epic for code coverage reports in GitLab right now. I would call it a very meta / aspirational epic of things that we could do with code coverage reports. I mentioned earlier that we want to increase the amount of reports that we support. Right now, if you are uploading a Curvatura XML report, that will drive the test coverage visualization on the MR diff. We want to see what we can do to extend that report so that when it's uploaded, it pulls out that coverage data instead of having to parse for it, presents it in more than just the single way of however your regex matches, so that you could get lines of code versus statements versus whatever. And then we're looking for what problems are customers solving with those visualization tools that they have today. Or what outcomes would they want from a visualization tool, so that we can start to pull some of that data back in to the MR widget or in a CI report type of view. So those are things that are on our radar, but we haven't seen the demand for anything beyond support additional report formats for the coverage visualization so far that would prioritize that work for us. So I'd be interested to hear from you, Ron, and we can do this async or at a different time, what are some of the problems that they want to solve with those coverage tools? Definitely the code quality in the MR widget is super powerful. What kind of signals could we give the customer to tell them where there is a problem? And even better, here's the action that you should go take to solve it. We'd love to hear that. And I'd be happy to do any sort of demo on the test coverage visualization. I believe it's included in the demos in the deck as well.
Thank you so much, James, for coming on and sharing this great content and answering questions from the team. And thank you, field team, for your active participation.
Yeah,
so we are
so
at
much.
time. We'll wrap it up today. But when you send me the link to the slides, I'll include that both in the notes doc, and then when I share out the recording of today's session, I'll include that and I'll share that in the sales Slack channel. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you again. Talk to you again soon. Thanks again, James.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Cheers.